Hi, I'm Casey.
And I'm Reese.
We're here to talk to you about decisions.
But what is a decision?
A decision means choosing what you want to do. It's called making your mind up.
Decisions can be small or they can be big.
Sometimes decisions can be so big they need more than one person to help make them.
Let's go to the moon!
Yeah, let's go to the moon.
We're going to the moon!
There are heaps of examples of people making decisions.
We'll go east. We'll go west. We'll go east. No, we'll go south.
He kept changing his mind, but that's okay.
We can all make a decision and change our mind later if we want to.
These decisions are big decisions, but we all make small decisions every day.
I'll wear the blue one.
See, that was easy.
Let's look at some other day-to-day decisions.
Like, what will I have for breakfast?
Decision, I choose toast.
Decision, I choose cereal.
See, people can make different decisions.
I've decided to go to the park, but how will I get there?
Decision, I'll ride my skateboard.
Decision, I'm going to catch the bus.
See, they are day-to-day decisions.
What to wear, what to eat, where to go, how to get there.
But remember, we don't have to make decisions about everything at once.
And we don't have to make decisions on our own.
You can talk to other people because some decisions need thinking and talking about.
That's right. They're what I call big decisions.
Staying at school, is that a big decision?
It sure is. Deciding to stay at school or go to TAFE or somewhere else is a big decision.
What about looking for a job? Is that a big decision?
Yep, looking for a job and going to work. They're big decisions too.
So those decisions need lots of thinking about.
That's right, but we're not deciding anything right now. We're just looking at the choices.
We can think about them and we can talk about them with other people.
Now this is the important bit. Here's what we need to remember about making decisions.
Cool.
I'll say them and together we can repeat them. I have the right to make decisions.
I have the right to make decisions.
I can make decisions.
I can make decisions.
I can learn from trying things out.
I can learn from trying things out.
I can talk to other people.
I can talk to other people.
I can change my mind if I want to.
I can change my mind if I want to.
I can make decisions other people don't like.
I can make decisions other people don't like.
I can make decisions that are different to other people's decisions.
I can make decisions that are different to other people's decisions.
Well done.
It's a lot to remember.
Yes, but you can watch this again or ask someone about it anytime.
I've learnt a lot today.
Well done, Reese. And well done you. That's the end.
But how will we finish the show?
We can decide.
Okay, I like the rocket. Can we end with that?
Good decision.
There are many roles that a manager has within an organization. Performing these roles is the basis of a manager's job. To be effective at these roles, a manager must be a complete business person by understanding the strategic, tactical, and operational responsibilities that he or she holds. While not always explicitly stated in a manager's job description, at any given moment, a manager might have to be a coach, a strategic planner, a liaison, a cheerleader, a conflict manager, a realist, a problem solver, an organizer, an optimist, a trainer, and a decision maker. These roles can change from day to day, but one thing is for sure. A manager must understand all of their roles and how to perform them effectively. This means that a manager must have a global understanding of all business functions, organizational goals, his or her level of accountability, and the appropriate way to serve both internal and external clients of the organization. Henry Mintzberg spent much of his career researching the managerial roles and behaviors of several chief executive officers, or CEOs. Mintzberg discovered that managers spent most of their time engaging in 10 specific roles. He was able to then classify these roles into 3 categories, including interpersonal, informational, and decisional roles. To better understand these roles, let's look at how they are applied by Bernard the Boss as he goes through his daily routine as a manager at a local grocery store. The first category of roles described by Mintzberg are called interpersonal roles. These roles involve the behaviors associated with human interaction. In other words, interpersonal roles are those roles which allow a manager to interact with his or her employees for the purpose of achieving organizational goals. There are 3 roles listed under the interpersonal roles, which include figurehead, leader, and liaison. Let's look at how these 3 roles are played out by Bernard. When Bernard arrives at the store in the morning, he holds a daily meeting for all employees who are working that day. He spends time talking about daily specials, sales goals, and motivates his employees for the day by holding a friendly contest between the workers to try to sell as many of the sale items as possible during their shift. He informs his employees that the highest seller will win a $50 gift certificate for the store. As a figurehead, Bernard the Boss has certain social, ceremonial, and legal responsibilities that his employees expect for him to fulfill. Bernard is seen as a source of inspiration and authority to his employees. As Bernard goes about his day, he must make sure that he's monitoring the performance of his employees and how well they are doing in their sales. He checks with his employees periodically to make sure that they understand the products that are on sale and what key features to point out, as well as to remind them of their goal of winning the contest. Bernard the Boss's role as a leader requires him to direct and manage the performance of his employees. He will spend time communicating performance goals, training and mentoring employees, supporting employee efforts, supplying resources, evaluating employee performance, and motivating employees towards a higher level of productivity. Bernard does not leave all the selling up to his employees because he likes to maintain contact with his customers to better understand their needs and how he can accommodate them. He stops and chats with several customers throughout the day to get feedback on sale items and to learn about the products that his customers would like to see the store put on sale in the future. Acting as a liaison is Bernard the Boss's final interpersonal role. As a liaison, Bernard communicates with internal and external members of the organization. This networking activity is a critical step in reaching organizational goals, especially those concerned with customers. The second category of managerial roles are informational roles. The informational roles include those roles in which a manager must generate and share knowledge to successfully achieve organizational goals. There are 3 roles listed under the informational roles, which include monitor, disseminator, and spokesperson. After Bernard is comfortable with his employees' understanding of sales products and their goals, he heads back to his office to do some research for what he will put on sale next week. Bernard spends time reflecting on the feedback his employees gave, the information his customers shared with him that day, and he also looks at what his competitors are putting on sale at this time. The monitor role that Bernard the Boss must fill involves the task of researching, locating, and choosing useful information. As a monitor, Bernard has to stay abreast to current industry standards and changes occurring in both the internal and external business environments. This also includes monitoring the performance of employees and their level of productivity. Bernard combines all of the information into a proposal for next week's sale advertisement and forwards the information to upper management for approval. He also spends some time previewing this information with his employees so that they can begin to familiarize themselves with the items. As a disseminator, Bernard must take the information he gathered as a monitor and forward it on to the appropriate individuals. Now that Bernard has approval from upper management, he creates the advertisement for next week's sale items and begins to distribute it to his customers. Acting as a spokesperson on behalf of the organization is Bernard's final informational role. As a spokesperson, Bernard communicates information about the organization to outside parties. The third category of managerial roles, according to Mintzberg, is called decisional roles. Decisional roles include those roles such as the entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, and negotiator. All of these roles involve the process of using information to make decisions. Bernard checks in with his employees midday and notices that some of the sale items have not done as well as anticipated. After speaking with his employees, he learns that the items that have not been selling are sitting next to the generic brand on the shelves. These generic brands are still less expensive than the sale items and causing customers to choose the less expensive version. Bernard makes the decision to move these items to a special display area where they can sit by themselves and hopefully attract more buyers. As an entrepreneur, Bernard the boss is focused on process improvement. He looks for ways to improve productivity and efficiency within his organization and directs the change process from development to implementation. As Bernard is setting up the display, he notices that two of his employees are arguing over the contest, and he is not the only one. Customers have also noticed, and some are starting to even leave the store. Bernard quickly intervenes and helps to bring the employees to an agreement. Acting as a disturbance handler, Bernard serves as a conflict manager. He spends time taking corrective action during times of dispute to remove any barriers towards organizational success. After the display is set up, Bernard heads back to his office and sees that he has a voicemail. After checking the voicemail, he learns that one of his employees who works the night shift has called out sick. He needs to cover that shift and quickly begins to ask employees who are currently working if they would mind working a double shift. He finds a replacement and he is then able to go back to his daily responsibilities. Determining the best place for organizational resources to be distributed is what Bernard does in his role as a resource allocator. Taking the time to plan, dispense, and monitor resources is essential for Bernard to ensure that his employees continue to be productive. Bernard the boss ends his shift with a conference call with one of his distributors. He learns that the store will now be charged an additional $300 for each delivery. Bernard knows that he has to adhere to a set budget that was based on the old delivery fees. He spends time negotiating with the distributor and comes to a compromise that the additional fee will not be charged until next quarter when he can account for it in their budget. The negotiator role is the last of the decisional roles that Bernard must fill. As a negotiator, Bernard acts as a representative for the team, department, or organization during times of negotiation, whereby he looks out for the best interest of the party with whom he represents. Even though Mintzberg's research was conducted many years ago, his discoveries of the 10 managerial roles are still seen in business today. Managers of all levels perform the roles described by Mintzberg on a daily basis at organizations worldwide. Many managers assess their own behaviors against those described by Mintzberg to become more self-aware of how they can improve their managerial practices. Let's review. There are many roles that a manager has within an organization. Henry Mintzberg described 10 specific managerial roles most commonly seen within organizations. Mintzberg classified the roles into 3 categories: interpersonal roles, or those roles associated with human interaction; informational roles, or those roles associated with sharing information; and decisional roles, or those roles involved in decision making. Interpersonal roles include the figurehead, leader, and liaison. Informational roles include the monitor, disseminator, and spokesperson. Decisional roles include the entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, and negotiator.
In this video I would like to talk a little bit more about the decision making, and we are going to see sort of 3 different ways how we make decisions, or how do we consider that other people are making decisions. So at first we will talk about the rational model, and let me just change my brush. So the first will be the rational model, then we will have bounded rationality, and finally we will have an intuition. So let's see, you can see the rational model I have described over here, then we have our bounded rationality, and finally our intuition. And you will see that there is some sort of a logic why I have chosen it to go this way. So let's start with the rational model. So that we often think the best decision maker is rational, consistent, while making value maximizing choices. This follows a rational decision-making model, which we have right over here. This is the rational decision-making model. However, as you will see, we are relying on assumptions, and that is the big problem. As you will see, let's start from the beginning. At first, this, our best decision maker, who is described right over here, defines the problem. So it is necessary, or we rely on the assumption that the decision maker is really able to define the problem perfectly. After the problem is defined, this best decision maker identifies the decision criteria. So that, let's say, after we have defined it, we tell ourselves, okay, our criteria are that the decision has to be made quickly, or it has to be made in 1 month, then it has to bring some values to our shareholders. Then thirdly, we allocate weights to the criteria. So that what is more important, that our project will be finished in 1 month, or that it will bring a lot of value to our shareholders. So we allocate these weights to the criteria. As fourth, we develop the alternatives. So what are the alternatives to our initial decision, or what are all of the alternatives that we can make? Fifth, we will evaluate these alternatives, and then we will select the best alternative. Now let's think about the assumptions. Well, if we define the problem, this is the first assumption that in reality is not possible to be done. And as you will see, the bounded rationality will try to solve this problem. In any case, we are unable to fully understand the problem, the consequences of the problem. Secondly, we are unable to identify really the decision-making criteria perfectly, just to some extent. Then again, allocating weight to the criteria. Now, here comes the biggest dispute: developing the alternatives. The rational model presumes that we really have all the information, so that we have all information. And that is, as you probably know, impossible. We cannot know everything that is, touching this problem we are trying to solve. This is just impossible, and that is one of the assumptions on which we are relying at. And so you will see that the bounded rationality is trying to solve it. So we have our alternatives, then we are evaluating the alternatives, and finally we select the best alternative. This is again a very strong presumption. So the best alternative, best alternative. Well, are you really able to say when you are making some decision that you have made a best choice? You don't know. Maybe you could have decided faster, maybe you could have decided a little bit differently, or maybe you could have made the decision later and it would be better. You never are able to really say if your decision was the best. So now we move from the rational model to the bounded rationality. And this says, because of limited information processing capacity, it is impossible to understand all the information. This is much more realistic. So that when there is some decision maker, well, he is not going to define the problem perfectly, but let's say just to certain extent, let's say to satisfying extent. Then when we are identifying the decision criteria, allocating weights, developing the alternatives, and let's say selecting the best alternative, all of this happens just to a satisfying extent, or to certain extent, or to certain extent. And all of this is because we as humans have this limited information processing capacity, so that we are unable to understand all the information and really be able to say, well, this is the best decision. So again, we will get to some satisfying decision. And still, we can get to some third understanding of decision making. So let me just draw some arrows, which will be an intuition. Intuition is a highly complex and highly developed form of reasoning. So it is a form of reasoning based on years of experience and learning. So that if we imagine that now we are being intuitive, if you imagine that, let's say we have been solving these kind of problems over the years and we have learned something. So that at first we will simply define the problem, and because our intuition, which was developed during the years of experience while working with these problems, we will simply jump through all the phases and we will know directly what is the solution that is the best, or that is the satisfying one. So we will jump directly to the solution. So as you can see, these three understandings are quite different. The rational model is some sort of a theory. So this is a theory, or the ideal state how we would like to solve the problems. Then we have the bounded rationality, where we are trying to solve the problems to the satisfying extent. And finally, we have an intuition, which is some form of reasoning which has been developed during the years of experience and learning.
Let's take a look at how we can use marginal analysis for optimal decision making. Marginal analysis involves looking at decisions incrementally. So, by incrementally, that means that we are looking at the additional benefits and the additional cost. In economics, we call additional benefits marginal benefits, and we call additional cost marginal cost. So the marginal benefit is the additional benefit derived from consuming one more unit of a good or service. So if I go to a pizza buffet and I go to the line the first time and I get a couple slices of pizza, I get a certain amount of benefit. I go back, I get a certain amount of benefit from the second trip. And that benefit that I got from the second trip is what we call the marginal benefit. If I go back a third time, I'll get some benefit from that third trip, and that also would be what we call the marginal benefit. The marginal cost is the additional cost derived from consuming one more unit of a good or service. So with the example of pizza, the cost or the marginal cost of consuming more pizza might be the increased calories, the feeling of fullness, changes in blood sugar, and so forth. A very important concept is that our marginal benefit diminishes as we consume more of a good or service. For example, when you go to a pizza buffet, that first time you go to the line, you get your pizza, it tastes really good. You go back again, it still tastes pretty good, but not as much. And then you go back again, and you could start to see that the benefit you get from each additional trip isn't going to be as much as that first one or as the trip before it. I mean, and this has to be true, or else you'd go to a pizza place and never ever leave. And of course, if we start doing something more and more, the cost increase. Each additional time we go to that pizza line, we're increasing the calories we consume, we're increasing what we're doing to our blood sugar. A lot of bad things are happening. The optimal point is where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. Marginal analysis doesn't tell us whether or not to do something. We've already made that decision. What it helps us with is how much of something should we do. Because it is definitely possible to do too much of something. We could eat too much slushy. We can get a little obsessed with collecting Hello Kitty stuff. There can even be too much pollution abatement. Looking at this graph, we see the blue line, which is marginal cost, the increasing cost of cleaning up the air, while the marginal benefit shows us the diminishing benefit of cleaning up the air. That point C, is where marginal benefit equals marginal cost. At that point, that's how much pollution abatement or reduction in pollution we want to have. You might think that, well, why don't we just reduce all pollution from the air? Well, we get to a point in which the air is clean enough, and to get the air any cleaner, we really don't notice any benefit, and we might be spending $10 or $20 for a cubic foot of clean air. I mean, you have to think, is it worth it? Let's do an example. Let's take a look at how much pizza we actually should eat using marginal benefit, marginal cost, marginal analysis. Let's take a look at this in table form. We start out with no pizzas. So there's no cost, there's no benefit. And we go and decide to eat one piece of pizza. Well, the total cost of that one pizza, as far as calories and blood sugar, may be 100 units of whatever. So as we go from 0 to 100, our addition, what we added was 100. So our marginal cost is 100 units. But we added 1,000 units of benefit. We went from no benefit to 1,000 units of benefit. So we added 1,000 units of benefit. Our marginal benefit is 1,000. And looking at the marginal cost and the marginal benefit, we see the marginal cost to that first slice of pizza is 100. The marginal benefit is 1,000. So we got way more benefit from that additional slice than it cost. So what we do is we keep eating. So we eat a second slice of pizza. The second slice, our total cost now goes to 250. It was 100, so we added 150 to our cost. So our cost is 150, and notice that the marginal cost increased. Our total benefit went from 1,000 to 1,800, so we added 800 to our marginal benefit. So our marginal benefit went from 1,000 to 800. Now notice our diminishing marginal benefit, but the marginal benefit is still greater than the marginal cost, so we keep eating pizza. We eat a third piece of pizza, and we see that our marginal cost of the third piece is 200, and the marginal benefit of the third piece is 600. So marginal benefit is greater than the marginal cost. we go ahead and eat another slice. The fourth slice gives us a marginal cost of 250 and a marginal benefit of 400. They're getting close together, but the marginal benefit still exceeds the cost, so we eat another piece of pizza. That fifth piece of pizza has a marginal cost of 300 and a marginal benefit of 300. Marginal cost and marginal benefit are equal to each other, so we stop at 5 slices of pizza. If we eat 5 slices of pizza, we have made an optimal decision.
A family watching television in the evening. That's a scene common to millions of homes in India. Obviously, this prime time is the most sought after duration by advertisers. Let's think of 2 well-known cell phone brands. Let's call them Phone 1 and Phone 2. Let's say Phone 1 is already advertising on a primetime GEC show. Will it be a good idea for Phone 2 to advertise on another GEC at the same time? Are popularity and brand fit of the program the only criteria, or are there other risks too? How will the Phone 2 brand team take a call? By gut feel? Or is there a scientific basis to think in such a situation? Enter behavioral science, a science that helps us understand the emotional, social, cognitive and psychological factors that influence the consumer's decisions. Bounded rationality, a behavioral science theory, suggests that irrespective of brand fit, it may or may not be a good idea for Phone 2 to reach out to consumers at the same time when Phone 1 is already reaching. But why? According to the theory, when the consumer gets multiple signals at the same time, his ability to process them reduces. Sounds logical actually. According to this theory, Phone 2 brand team can derive that the consumer's reception to its brand message will actually depend on its competitive position. If Phone 1 is a leader brand and Phone 2 is also a leader brand, brand saliency of both will reduce. If Phone 1 is a leader and Phone 2 is a challenger, Phone 2 will actually get hurt and Phone 1 will actually benefit. If Phone 1 is a challenger and Phone 2 is the leader, Phone 2 will benefit and Phone 1's saliency will go down. And if Phone 1 and Phone 2 are both challengers, again, brand saliency of both will reduce. Is it that rational? After all, the consumer takes his decision on emotional, social, cognitive and psychological factors, right? Can we test this hypothesis experimentally? In a famous experiment, the psychologists Mark Lepper and Sheena Iyengar observed consumer choice in 2 situations. One, where consumers were given 24 brands of jams to choose from, and in another, where they were given only 8 brands. The latter group was found to be more likely to make a purchase compared to the first group. In another experiment, housewives were given 4, 8, 12 and 16 brands to choose from, with 4, 8, 12 and 16 bits of information per brand. The study showed that people have limited information processing ability, and too much information overload can actually lead to poorer choices. Exactly this way, the Phone 2 team can actually test the hypothesis with controlled behavioral science experiments. So, will the Phone 2 brand team understand the consumer by gut feel, or do they have a scientific basis to think? That's the value of behavioral science. It gives the marketer a framework to think and methods of experimental validation of hypotheses, all based on a highly developed science.
Life is life. Life is an interesting journey of ups and downs. But how that journey ends is up to you today. You see, when you fall down and you feel like giving up, when times get tough, it's not the end. The question is, are you going to finish strong? The definition of a disability is something that will hinder you from being able to do something. I think, though, the greatest disability is not having no arms and no legs. The greatest disability is your mind, the choices that you make. The question is, are you going to make the right choices? Are you going to make the choice to have your life in its right perspective? Are you going to make the choice to get up instead of give up? Are you going to make the choice to dream big? There is no greater disability that we have in our life than to make the decision to give up. Because once you give up, then there is no hope. But until you give up, there is that hope. My passion is to encourage people, to inspire people to be all that they can be. I found my purpose, I found my strength, and I want you to find yours. Don't be afraid of failing. Every time you fall down, every time you fail, you learn something new. You're ready for the next one. You've learned how not to do something. Well, then learn from it and move on. Leave what's behind and press forward. You can only win if you don't give up. Go for it. Don't let anything hold you back. If nothing's holding me back, what's holding you back? No goal is too big. No dream is too far-fetched. It's as big as you can dream it. There are times in life where you don't see the purpose or the good in your situation. But just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not coming. Who goes to the train station, looks down the railway and says, the train's not here, I'm leaving. You will wait for the train. Why? Because the schedule says that the train is coming. So just because you can't see the hope in your situation, it doesn't mean that it's not there. You see, many people think that I have only one foot just because you can't see the other one. I've gone from a life without limbs into a life without limits. What about you?